All right, let's check the NFL scores and so on and so forth from week 5. All right. Oh, okay. Well, that wasn't a great start to anything. It's got to pick up, right? I can't have too bad of a fucking hell. Well, think it's pretty safe to say that I did not have the greatest week when it came to my NFL predictions. So, in light of that, why not end the week with some wrestling? All right? Why not have a day where I can relax from all the pain and suffering of having just about 3 predictions out of what 15 this week, correct? What a time to be alive, Zach fucking Hardy. But however, it is a case of what a time to fucking be alive if you are a USW fan. As I fixed the camera because I was too lazy to do that originally. Now I look better. So you will obviously notice that this past Sunday was USW Aerial Attack and USW Aerial Attack and WWE Hell in a Cell 2017. And I'm not sure whether I want to put out a review of WWE Hell in a Cell 2017 just yet, but I do know I want to put out a review on USW Aerial Attack 2017 because while it is absolutely not going to be the absolute wrestling pay-per-view of the year, and while it may not be the greatest pay-per-view that USW has ever put out, it by damn sure is not one of the worst and is probably one of the more memorable of the entire year. For one, you had Ezra Hills and Benny Franklin with their first legitimate clash. I mean, their clash their original clash for the USW title was one thing. It was a case of, Benny Franklin really dominated that match for the most part. They wanted to make him look strong, especially putting Ezra Hills through 3 tables, the ring, and breaking a chair over his back. So that I don't really count that as the first meaningful match. I think that was just a real slow and easy right into their legitimate feud. And I think this was the kickoff of their legitimate feud. And holy fuck, their next match is going to have to top one hell of a fucking barnstorm. And on top of Ezra Hills versus Benny Franklin at USW Aerial Attack, you also had scars and war scars of the ladder match between myself and Derek Carter for the USW title. You had the Stargazers and Amor and Xavier King pull out from their asses what seemed to be one of the best matches either team has had since their inception. On top of that, you had James and Western Light for the Red Belt Championship. Very much of this show couldn't have gone wrong. It was a case of great wrestling, great storytelling, and for the most part, it was a very enjoyable show, not just to be a part of, but also to watch, live in person as it went on. And honestly, it is a pay-per-view that I need to review on video form. And I mean, what fucking hell of a way to kind of close out the pay-per-view chronology for Wednesday Night Intensity going into the Bulletproof event. Man, good luck severity and topping that at Broken Bonds. So when it comes down to it, I have the obvious written review from thezachhardy.com/wrestling/USW aerial attack 2017 written review. And for simplistic reasons, you can go down to the description down below and click on the link to go and read that written review as well as the written preview. I believe right underneath the WWE Hell in a Cell preview. And I have the match card written or taken down from here with some simple thoughts, but I'll kind of steer away from the thoughts that I wrote down on the website and kind of just talk about the show. But for one, yes, the couch is ripped. I don't find it ugly. I find that it has personality. And on top of that, when it comes down to the pattern of the couch, you get fucking used to it. I like sitting on the couch with the reviews. The desk is just, I I feel more free and more open, more comfortable, more relaxed, more casual. Fuck you if you don't like it. Thank you very much. So when it comes down to it, there was 8 matches, I believe, on the card. Let me count real quickly. Yes, there was 8 matches, and at the very end of the show, there was a very big surprise with Mr. Anthony. I'm not gonna pull threads right at the moment, but the Army of One may be crossing over to Ultimate Showcase Wrestling's world. So when it comes down to it, the kickoff match was the #1 contenders match for the USW Tag Team Championships. The Stargazers, Aiden Ritchie and Arvo Black, versus Amore and Xavier King. Now, going into the show, you really kind of felt that neither of these teams felt like credible challengers to the USW Tag Team Championships. And while they may not seem like valuable opponents when it comes down to their match against, spoiler alert, the Martin brothers when their championship opportunity comes, while they may not look like valuable contenders in the case of they're going to win, they definitely do look like worthy challengers. I mean, this match really gave me hope for both teams. I mean, over the past couple of months, the Stargazers have been very underutilized. They came into the company with a lot of momentum. They were really the first notable indie tag team to come into USW, first real indie performers notable that made a splash on the indie scene to come into USW, kind of cross boundaries, cross platforms. And they came in with a lot of momentum, a lot of star power, a lot of notice and notoriety. And after a couple of months, that kind of died down a little bit, and they started not being used the way they should be, somewhat enhancement talent, and that really kind of bothered me. And obviously the Stargazers are a great tag team, as shown by the kickoff match, and as are Amore and Xavier King. And I didn't really feel that they had a ton of chemistry. I didn't feel that they were going to last long in the tag team division. I didn't think they really had the it factor to be a worthy challengers to the tag team division, or worthy opponents in the tag team division. I felt like, and I still kind of feel like, Amore and Xavier King are better singles performers than they are tag team performers. But this past match at the kickoff, this past kickoff match at the Aerial Attack Show really proved that both teams can go at it in the ring. I mean, a great way to start the show. You had riding high. There was great selling. The tag team work was just beautiful. You had Aiden Ritchie and Arvo Black kind of manipulating the joints, kind of manipulating, fingers, holding into the arms. They were kind of playing into a defense kind of territory. Amore would try to get to his corner to tag in Xavier King, and that didn't end up happening all too often. But afterwards, he would tag in Xavier King, and Xavier King would go off on Arvo Black, and then once Amore got back up to the apron, it started like the shoe had switched feet. The Stargazers were now the ones that were trying to play offense, and Xavier King and Amore were playing defense. And the selling was absolutely pitch perfect. You had Amore go up to the top rope in the Stargazers corner to hit an elbow drop, or what seemed like an elbow drop, on Aiden Ritchie, and Arvo Black was on the outside. He was knocked off the apron by Amore a little bit earlier beforehand, gets back up onto the apron, takes him out from the leg. Amore I don't really know how to describe it, but he falls right ass first onto the top turnbuckle post and just kind of sells like it's going up his back, like the impact was ringing up his back from his hips or whatever, up his back, down up to his shoulders. He really sold it like it had force and it had impact, which obviously led to the extremely athletic maneuver by Aiden Ritchie, where he went to the outside, hit what seemed to be a springboard, and ended up getting what was, I guess, a reverse kind of hurricanrana off the top rope, knocking Amore to the middle of the ring, which was absolutely done beautifully. And that was really like the defining feature of, wow, the selling in this match is extremely top notch. And Obviously, going into this match that the Stargazers on the indie scene had charisma. They had the it factor. One of the most successful teams in not only in the New England independent scene, but at the same time, more like the Southern independent scenes before they moved upwards. Tag team champions in multiple promotions. They have the it factor. But it was just a case of, I don't know if they really adjusted to the environment of what they were going around with, all too well. I mean, it was essentially like if you took a guy from WCPW and put him in the WWE on the Raw roster, and at the same time expecting everybody to love them because of their history and being the focal point of the tag team division. I don't know if the environment really kind of threw them off, but whatever it may be, it doesn't seem to be a problem now. The match was absolutely pitch perfect. There was great spots. I mean, you had Aiden Ritchie having Xavier King up for a suplex, and then at the same time, you saw Arvo Black go up to the top rope and then hit a drop kick on Xavier King, which led to Aiden Ritchie hitting a suplex. Going into the pinfall, Amore gets into the ring just at the brink of time and breaks up the pin at like 2.5. Selling was great. Character development was absolutely fantastic. The one critique that I actually had about the match was that it just wasn't long enough. It's very common in USW, more so than a lot of other promotions, where you see them after 15, 20 minutes. It's a case of they've put in enough work to make it seem like a 30-minute match, They really use the time and they keep up the momentum. And I think the conditioning is a very huge part when it comes to USW's training. It kind of shows because you have, this kind of show that has a 3-hour limit. And while you have character build up in it as well, you also have to have maneuvers. You have to maneuver through the card, and you have to have matchups that actually have impact. And at the same time, you got to play like you're conserving time. So a 15-minute match or a match has to be 15 minutes when it comes to time constraints, but feel like a 25-minute match. So, the conditioning goes on. You've got to get more action for your minute more so than where you would get otherwise. So 15-minute matches seem to be like 25-minute matches. But in this case, it was like you didn't really want it to stop. And this is the kind of case where I saw the Usos versus the New Day at Hell in a Cell, inside Hell in a Cell, kind of do it a little bit better. You had more time to kind of build up character. It was spot on. And while this match was spot on, I don't think it had enough time. It only went on for 17 minutes or something along the lines, but it felt like it was a 20-minute match. And it was one of those matches that you didn't really want to see end, and you kind of saw a few of those on this card, which is not really surprising from the improvement you've seen on the intensity roster. But at the same time, it is kind of surprising for a B show or a C show in this matter like this. So at the very end, the Stargazers end up picking up the win over Amore and Xavier King, with Aiden Ritchie hitting an elbow drop off of the top rope onto Xavier King. And it looked more so like the elbow drop had hit Xavier King on the chin, more so than on the chest. I think it may have been a miscalculation on the Stargazers' part. But whatever the matter was, Stargazers win via pinfall over Amore and Xavier King, become the new #1 contenders to the USW Tag Team Championships. Excellent way to open up the show. Very few critiques here. A lot of praise to both teams, both performing teams, we'll say that. I really hope for big things to come for both of these teams in the future. I don't think the Stargazers are at that moment where they can take the USW Tag Team titles and run with them, but I like what they're doing right now, and I like the build-up that they have going forward. So I think that looks very promising, and it was a great way to open up the show. Second match on the card was the Blue Belt Championship match, with Philip Akron defending the title against Hernastley. Now, I've said it since the very beginning of his reign. Philip Akron and the Blue Belt Championship reign he's had will probably go down as one of the best highlights in his career at this moment in time. The guy just cannot have a bad match with that title on his shoulder. He's made it mean so much. He's made it feel like more of a more of a deal than it had been. And I'm not saying guys like Amor or whomever has held the blue belt title, BP Fierce James. I'm not saying that they didn't make it mean anything. I'm just saying that Philip Akron, I think, at the end of this reign, which I'm personally predicting to be next month at Bulletproof, no matter what it is, I have a good feeling that this reign that Philip Akron has with a blue belt title, I have a good feeling that this will go down as one of the best blue belt championship reigns in the company's history. I was kind of skeptical at first. I knew he could do very well with the title on his shoulder, carrying that title, making it mean something. I had no clue he was going to do the absolute best job that he has done so far. It's a case of, if Intensity was still, streamable for me, I would love watching the development of his championship reign continue on, because it seems like it is just the focal point, or one of the more entertaining, bigger focal points of Intensity nowadays, and that is extremely enjoyable, and I'm loving what he's doing, and I hate knowing that it's going to end soon, but man, you got to give it to him for the work that he's done with that championship. On the other hand, you got a guy like Hernasli. Going into this match, I get insight from the guys working, and I will ask some of my insiders from USW, or crowd members that I've kind of grown close to, as it's giving me sources for what the shows go on, because obviously once I left USW, I wouldn't have time to stream every show, especially every house show. So usually they go to most of the house shows or most of the live shows, and I'll ask them if I miss anything, what happens. That way I can give a review on it or give my thoughts on it. And when it came down to this, what I had heard was that the booking on Intensity over the past couple of weeks going into Akron versus Hernasli could have been better. The build-up focused more so on Philip Akron praising himself as a great blue belt champion, and how everybody has loved the reign, and how he told everybody at the beginning of his reign that he was going to make the most of it, and he proved fair on his word. And Hernasli, on the other side, was built as this challenger that would be one of the stronger chances of taking the title off of Akron's shoulder, being as he is a former world champion, being as he is a former key and case holder, being as he is a former top priority of Friday Night Severity. He's one of the more over guys on the roster still, even with the mid-card booking on Intensity. Sorry, the nail's broken, and I'm just trying to, you see me do that a lot. So, essentially, the build-up to this match was Philip Akron is being praised as the blue belt champion and has made the most of his reign since the very beginning. And now it's just a case of, well, we're going to try to find the best chances of taking it off of him. And Hernasli being a former world champion, Hernasli, I think he may be a former USW tag team champion. I don't think he is. He probably contended for the title with Amor and Cased, but I'd have to look into that. He's a former Extreme champion. He's done very well with his performances over the past year and a half. It's over the past 2 years, really. It's been just a steady incline for Hernasli over the past couple of years, and so he's billed as this formidable challenger to Philip Akron. He's not like he spent most of the time in the mid cards. He's had main event taste. He's had main event level priorities, whereas the closest Philip Akron's got to that was his team with Alexander Rotten and Appetite for Destruction, and probably his tag team with Chris Ross when he was making shots at the tag team division. So that was the build-up, and a lot of people said, they could have done more. They could have come across the line of making it feel like a bad blood feud, and perhaps it would have overtaken some of the other championship matches. I mean, the structure for most USW pay-per-views, at least in my view, is If there's more non-title matches and title matches, they'll try to scrunch a couple of non-title matches between title matches. And if there's an even number, it'll be like title match, non-title match, title match, non-title match, or the opposite way around where it's non-title match, non-title match, title match. So a lot of people say, well, it comes down to the case of, all right, the USW Tag Team Championship is more than likely in the middle. The blue belt title and the red belt title compete for top of the show and near the later of the show, and the world title headlines the show, which is an interesting structure. So a lot of people said had the feud meant more, it could have been one of the final matches of the show, and I absolutely agree with that. These are two phenomenal workers, especially in the past couple of months and really the past year. They both have great characters. The audience is just really behind them, which you really couldn't say at this point in time, like 2.5, 3 years ago. Hern Astley, people were just sick of him. He was a despicable heel because he just couldn't do anything. He couldn't cash it, or he couldn't, I say cash in. He couldn't utilize his opportunity for any title, really, with the King case. He just held on to it for what was ages. He couldn't connect with the audience. The audience wasn't behind him. And at the same time, Philip Akron was this monster for a little bit, and then he just kind of dwelled in the mid-card and was forgotten about. So now look where they are this point in time. So the progress has been absolutely amazing, and they could have even used that into the feud to make it mean more. But enough talking about the feud. The match itself was absolutely solid. I mean, that's something you expect from both performers. I mean, Philip Akron is seasoned. Hern Astley has improved greatly over the past couple of years. So this match was obviously expected to be absolutely above par. I think two critiques, really. The first critique was that the match suffered from its spot. Granted, I know they probably didn't expect the Stargazers and Amor and Xavier King to take the show by the balls the way they did. So I don't think they really expected that match to really contend to outtake the blue belt title match. So I think the critique was that one of the two critiques was that the match suffered from its spot on the card, having to follow such an amazing and exciting and adrenaline-filled kickoff match. And the second critique that I had on the match was that Tyreek Carver wasn't at ringside. And I find that a little bit of a problem because essentially over the past few months, from what I've seen and from what I've heard and from what I've read, Tyreek Carver is being groomed as, he's essentially like Deacon Batista to a more popular Reverend Devon. He is the enforcer for Philip Akron. Philip Akron is stronger than most heels because he can win most of his matches on his own, but there have been some matches where Tyreek Carver's gotten involved and helped Philip Akron. It's not been every match. I think maybe it's closer to half than, if anything. So he's been, sorry, I don't know. My knee is just fucking buckled Saturday, so it's giving me problems. So if fuck, I can't even do that. So just notice that. So Tyreek Carver is being groomed as the enforcer, and Philip Akron doesn't necessarily need him 24/7. Granted, when he was implemented, it was to kind of further Philip Akron as a legitimate blue belt champion, kind of help his character along. You knew they had some plan for Philip Akron going forward, and Tyreek Carver was meant to be the guy that would be the enforcer for Philip Akron, and then eventually would end up turning on him, the same way that you would expect, it to play out. But when it meant more, you would assume for Tyreek Carver to end up taking the Blue Belt Championship. And from what I'm hearing is that if it's not at Bulletproof, then at the following pay-per-view, which I believe is Illusion, the next Intensity Soul-branded pay-per-view is Illusion in December, then Tyreek Carver would beat Philip Akron there. And I guess the plan going into that would be that Tyreek Carver would win the blue belt title at Illusion or Bulletproof, and Philip Akron and he would end their feud probably around Insanity or the pay-per-view afterwards, which I believe is the return of No Forgiveness in February. And then they'd have their match in March. I'm sorry, no, and then they'd go their separate ways starting in March, and Philip Akron would have a big Call to Greatness 13 match, while Tyreek Carver would defend the blue belt title. That's essentially where I assume it is going to go from the looks of it. That's how I would imagine it's being planned. So all in all, you know, when it comes down to what is essentially, in that case, what would end up turning out to be if Philip Akron lost the blue belt title at Bulletproof, then this would be his final match, his final pay-per-view match where he'd walk out blue belt champion. So I think since Philip Akron was out in Tyreek Carver's corner later in the night for his match against Prophecy, I feel like Tyreek Carver should have been in Philip Akron's corner for his blue belt title match against Hernastley, and possibly help Philip Akron retain the title, which could have ended up leading to Tyreek Carver going, well, I mean, half the time, I'm the reason why he kept that title. So, you know, fuck you, punch to the face, power bomb, or something like that. And that could be the story. So I felt like the lack of Tyreek Carver at ringside kind of hindered my kind of take on where that would go. I mean, granted, maybe they're not even thinking about Tyreek Carver taking the title off him. Maybe they're not even having Philip Akron lose the title anytime soon. Maybe they're just all on board with Akron as blue belt champion and want this to go as long as possible because it's doing very well, and it has been for the past half a year. But in my mind, I see this kind of working out to be the case where Tyreek Carver ends up taking the title from Philip Akron. And if that's the case, then he should have been at ringside in this match. Granted, the match didn't suffer from a lack of Tyreek Carver. It was very well executed. Philip Akron played into it very well. He's still kind of like this heel, but he's having more face tendencies to the point where he's gone to the top rope, which is something he used to do a couple of years ago, but stopped doing after he turned heel and after he just kind of started focusing more on Powerhouse. There was at one point where he tried to throw Hernastley into the barricade, over the barricade at ringside, but stopped because he saw the fans there and didn't want to hurt him. So he threw him into the ring and he didn't really say anything. He just did that and then walked into the ring. So he showed more face tendencies than he did heel. But at the same time, he still is a heel. So he worked into the crowd. I believe there was somebody at ringside. I don't know. I couldn't make out exactly what he said, but he said something along the lines of, "Where's Tyreek?" or something like that, or "Where's where did Carver go?" or something like that. And Akron said, "I don't need him. I don't need him. You need him. I'm the wrestler. You need a protection more than I need protection." Which I thought was, a decent heel tactic. So he's showing signs of both. On the other hand, you have a case of Hernastley is that the guy who will not give up. He is John Cena, not on the case of the top priority in the company, the number one merch seller all over the place, but he's John Cena in the case of he just doesn't give up. He will not give up. He will not back down. He will not tap out unless absolutely forced to. Like, let's say his ankle is broken in an ankle lock, then he will tap out because he's been brought to his breaking point. But the thing about Hernastley is that it's tough to get him to his breaking point. So the storytelling was there. So Hernastley would get thrown into the corner. He'd continue fighting back. He'd go on a spurt. He would take advantage. And then Philip Akron would take advantage and would just continue to capitalize on that, and Hernastley would not stay down. So eventually, when it comes down to it, Hernastley goes to the top rope, hits an axe handle, goes to hit Cased, and a beautiful fucking counter. I don't know how they managed it, but essentially, Hernastley, if you don't know, his Cased finisher is essentially a curb stomp, but instead of using the bottom of his foot, he uses the bottom of his knee. So he goes, and it's essentially a leaping face buster to the back of the head on, I guess, a bent over opponent. And he did that, and Philip Akron caught him in midair, adjusted him into a sidewalk slam position, and thrust him upon his knee, which is the acorn. That's his finishing maneuver. Hits him with the acorn, 1, 2, 3. Philip Akron wins. He retains the blue belt championship over Hernasli. Really good match. Went for close to 20 minutes. Was filled with a lot of emotion, a lot of drive, and a lot of passion. I enjoyed the match. It resonated very well with the crowd. They were very into it. Towards the ending of the match, you could kind of hear the crowd chanting, "This is awesome," which was a great sight to see. And essentially, Philip Akron gets the win at the end of the match. I was very happy with the match. I was very happy with the outcome. I think it was hindered by the fact that I had to follow the kickoff match. And Jesus Christ, I've gone on a long rant. Are we in almost an hour through this? I don't fucking know. I'm going to keep going. So essentially, it was a very well-worked match. It was hindered by the fact that I had to follow that kickoff match, but it was very well-worked, very well maneuvered, and I'm extremely happy with what Philip Akron has done with that blue belt title, and Hernasli just continues to look more and more like a legitimate top guy in the company. So I'm very happy about that. Third match, probably the match I have the least to say about other than Prophecy versus Tyreek Carver, and that is Morgan Anthony versus Zach Arden. I've said it before, Morgan Anthony is very green. He's essentially Baron Corbin in his early NXT days, and that's not me insulting Baron Corbin for anybody that's like, oh, you just hate Baron Corbin because he can't wrestle or can't talk. That's not what I'm saying at all. As a matter of fact, I really like Baron Corbin, and I really like his gimmick, and I like his theme, and I like what he's got going on right now. Please don't block me on Twitter, Mr. Corbin. But it was more of a case of, Baron Corbin in his early NXT days, and I think he can, admit to it himself as well, that he wasn't necessarily the most gifted in the ring looking at every other performance. He obviously has a great gimmick, and he has a great style, and he has a great way of playing into a heel character, but the wrestling style early on in his NXT days was not top-notch, and a lot of people can say that are homegrown from the WWE system. Morgan Anthony was homegrown from the USW system. That's what you see with a lot of guys that come up to USW that seemingly haven't been seen before, and that's because they try out at USW. They have this kind of training academy. You have to be qualified to an extent where you have to have a background knowledge about the industry. You have to put in work. They treat it like it's a weekly show, even though it's not broadcasted. It's just they like seeing what you can do in a limited environment. And that's where you see a bunch of guys like Tyreek Carver and Morgan Anthony come up from. And Morgan Anthony probably came up a little bit too soon. Granted, when Kyle Reese Jr. Decided to pull him up from developmental, I think he kind of focused a lot more on the case of Morgan Anthony as a bitter heel. He's a very good heel. It's just he can't really go in the ring to the highest extent. So you have a guy like Morgan Anthony, who is essentially homegrown in Ultimate Showcase Wrestling, and then you have a guy like Zach Arden, who was very prominent in the independent scene, worked a couple of dates with WOW back when it was kind of in its I call it the barn days, but it's an Armory Show days. And then he ended up getting work with Stardom Wrestling organization. For those of you who get confused, when I mention Stardom Wrestling, I don't mean the all-women's promotion. I mean Stardom Wrestling Organization, SWO, which was essentially a smaller private wrestling company that used to work in Connecticut. It was not Stardom Wrestling, the one you all know. It was the one that was essentially trying to compete with USW on a smaller scale. It was essentially trying to be an alternative, not really compete. But it's SWO, not Stardom Wrestling, for those of you who are confused. Confused about that. So Stardom Wrestling, in essence, Zach Arden was homegrown there. He essentially thrived there. He became one of the top-notch guys there. And when Stardom Wrestling Organization ended up going out of business and he ended up leaving the company, along with guys like Jake Porter and Derek Carter even. He ended up coming to USW. He ended up finding a short-lived tag team with Fernandez on Severity a couple of, maybe a year ago, if I'm not mistaken, a little over a year ago. And now he's on Intensity. They're trying to give him a singles push, and he's a really good wrestler. It's just, excuse me, I don't know if he's really resonated with the crowd yet. I think, excuse me, because you had Stardom Wrestling with a crowd of 400 people on a consistent basis, switching to a crowd of like almost 2,000, was a big change. It was a big difference. So I think the larger capacity may have thrown him off just a little bit. Nevertheless, you've heard a lot of rumors about Zach Arden in line for a singles push. And his first task was with Morgan Anthony, which is essentially like if you took a wrestler who wasn't necessarily proven in his environment and put him up against a guy who definitely needs improvement in the wrestling aspect and see what he can do in a limited capacity. And granted, this was not the most amazing match. It was not the most technically wondrous. However, it was probably Morgan Anthony's best match since coming up to the main roster. In essence, I think Zach Arden really shined through to be a good, solid worker. He called the shots well. I think Morgan Anthony really benefited from the experience of Zach Arden. And overall, I was very pleased to see the work that Arden put in on this match. Morgan Anthony definitely showed improvement, whether that's because he's been working harder over the past couple of months or not, or whether it's because he's gotten to take time off, or if it's because of who he was working with. Nevertheless, he was very, very, very well endowed here in this match, and Zach Arden really proved to be the real deal, a legitimate wrestler that can actually go in the ring. Now, whether his promo skills and fan reception can go up, and if he can improve on that, is yet to be seen. But I know USW is very high on Zach Arden at the moment, and honestly, and I like to give my opinions when it comes to wrestling, the kid is really, really talented. Backstage, he's a really nice guy, really enjoyable to be around. When he first got to the company and he was in the locker room, he seemed very weird, and not weird. I'm sorry, weird is the wrong word. Shy and nervous about the environment that he was in. But, he eventually got used to it. He's a very nice guy, a very welcoming guy, very enjoyable to be around, actually very humorous. He's very, very funny when it comes. He's got a very simple kind of comedy that just works. It fits his personality. Overall, really, really good guy. And, I don't say anything negative or positive about him because of how I personally feel about him. But overall, as I realized that I should probably check the live feed to see the chat. Okay, there's nothing in the chat. As it comes down to it, positive or negative, is based off of what I see in him as a performer, and I see a very promising performer in Zach Arden. I think he can absolutely go 100% in the ring. I think he can absolutely improve in the fan reception. And granted, maybe he's not ready for a world championship push at the moment, but he is absolutely red belt championship material, and in my opinion is absolutely blue belt championship material as well. So I see a very promising future for him. I think this feud with Morgan Anthony may ride out for a little bit longer, but yeah, I'm liking the direction that USW wants to take with him, and I hope he runs with it, because he's absolutely a very promising and talented performer, and there's no denying that. So the next match on the card was for the Red Belt Championship, and it was James defending the title against Western Light, and we can clear the air right now. God, time is flying. We can clear the air right now. When it comes down to it, we all know Western Light is about to kind of close out the chapter of full-time performer with the company. He's going to be taking time off. He's going to be kind of sitting, trying to do his own thing. Um, with time away from the industry. He's been doing this full time for the past 12 years, well, almost 12 years. I love the guy. He's a great, throughout all the gimmicks that he's had in his career, from, the dark and mysterious kind of vigilante slash kind of lone wolf hybrid, to beforehand when he was the hybrid Western Light, to when he was in his tag team with Majigeta. No matter what his gimmick was, he always backstage was a very likable and positive guy. No matter whether he was coming in to the building with an hour's sleep the night before or 15 hours of sleep the night before, he was always energetic, always ready to go. He loves the industry, and I respect the man 100% for everything he's done in the industry and for what he's accomplished. On the other hand, and I'm not saying he's old or anything like that, because he's absolutely not old by any means. It's just, I think, for how long he's done this and how long he's been in this industry, you gotta feel for the guy, man. He's been doing this for so long, full time, with pushes on and off, and at the same time, he's got a family, he's got a kid, he's balancing two lives essentially, and he can leave the company and be set for a long time, years, with his family, just based off of what he's earned with the company. Really, he has no reason to keep wrestling full time. He's done it all, essentially. He's a WOW Hall of Famer, former WOW World Champion. He's held the WOW Extreme title once. I believe he held the International Championship, if I'm not mistaken. He's held the World Championship. He's contended for the USW Championship. He's absolutely going to be in the USW Hall of Fame when it gets implemented, whenever that may be. I heard it was going to be next year, but then again, I heard it was going to end up happening in 2015 at the same time. So you never really know what to expect, but he's done it all. Absolute first ballot Hall of Famer in the company. He's got nothing left to prove. And there's been a huge rumor that last Sunday night's Aerial Attack pay-per-view was going to be his final rub to a performer underneath a full-time umbrella. And if that is the case, then A, not only what a fucking way to go out, but B, fucking thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Western Light. Thank you, Xavier. Thank you. You have been an absolute inspiration to me, an absolute influence to a bunch of every guy in the USW locker room, every guy in the WOW locker room. Thank you for everything you've done. With that being the case, I also said, what a fucking way to end your full-time career, or at least your full-time stint here. What a fucking way. Holy shit. I didn't expect much from the match. The build-up, from what I was told, the Red Belt Championship didn't get much love, I guess you can say, over the past 4 weeks of intensity. But from what I understand, 2 out of the 4 weeks of intensity featured or did not feature a Red Belt Championship kind of feud storyline. So they essentially had 2 weeks to kind of build it up. I guess the build-up was not great. It was great for what it was, but it wasn't too favorable amongst fans. So I can see where the low hope would be in the match. Granted, I knew guaranteed whether the feud or the build-up was proper or not, the match was absolutely going to be. It was a case of you have Western Light, a veteran, experienced performer, and James, one of, if not the guy of USW's future, battling it out for the Red Belt Championship in a match that meant something. It was great. Selling was on point. Character development was absolutely there. James seems like a bona fide star. Western Light seemed like he was 2011, 2012 era Western Light. He was going off. James was performing well. It was at one point in time where they had a standoff, and they were both on opposite ring ropes. James on the walkway most side of the ring, and Western Light on the commentator's most side of the ring, and they just slowly walked to the middle and kind of put their heads up against each other. Western Light said, "You ready?" And James went, "Damn ready, are you?" And Western Light went, and then they immediately started brawling. It was a fucking fist fight. It was a case of James was thrown into the corner, Western Light was hurled into the corner, James ran at the corner, and Western Light moved, and James hit the corner, and then back body drop, and then James would counter another one into a German suplex, and it was just absolute adrenaline from then on for the next 3 minutes. And then the end of the match was Western Light catching James from a springboard clothesline into a lantern position, and then James rolled through, grabbed the arm of Western Light, and hit it with a phenomenal midway counter into the midway for the 3 count, and that gave James the pinfall win over Western Light. And after the match, the crowd gave the guys a standing ovation, especially because I'm positive that they've heard the rumors about Western Light more than likely leaving very soon, for a little bit, hopefully. And James gets his hand raised. I mean, it wasn't very clear at the time. They didn't really focus on it too much, but Western Light did shake the hand of James, and then the referee raised James' hand, and Western Light applauded him as he walked out of the ring, which was in my mind, an absolute great kind of not only passing of the torch, really, but in essence, kind of a very, very dignified sign of respect. You belong here. Coming from a guy that's been here for over a decade, you belong here. And I think that really solidified James, and they can absolutely use that to their advantage for the coming weeks. So this match was by far going to be the match of the night if Ezra Rank Hills and Benny Franklin was not slated for this card, because we'll get to that in a little bit. But overall, really great match. James looked like a fucking bona fide star. And at the same time, Western Light looked like a legend. Not like a legend going out on his last leg, but he looked like a living legend that the company can and absolutely will use to their advantage whenever they can. So yeah. That was an absolutely great moment, and it really added a nice emotional touch and trusting touch into the show as a whole. So great moment. The next match, I have the least to say about it because I didn't see much of it. I ended up having to do something very quickly, and the match didn't last too long, so by the time I came back, it was nearing the final leg. But Tyreek Carver with Philip Akron in his corner against Prophecy. Going into the show, I guess this match, out of all the matches on the card, had the least amount of build-up. I can't really say much because I watched maybe the first minute of the match, did something really quick, got on a quick phone call, and especially because at this point in time, I was already kind of getting ready for my match and just doing my warm-up, so I didn't get to see it live either. So I ended up getting a quick phone call after doing a quick little thing, and then I came back, and essentially you saw Prophecy in the corner lining up for a big boot. And he hit the big boot, and then got Tyreek Carver into the limb lock and made Tyreek Carver tap out clean. So Prophecy beats Tyreek Carver via submission at USW Aerial Attack 2017. Again, can't say much about it. I would assume Prophecy's been very underused from what I've heard from guys backstage and so on and so forth. One big thing that I know about USW, not only is everybody in the backstage area a family and very, very friendly with each other, and I don't mean that in a sexual way, so stop trying to twist my words in the comments below, but they're very friendly in a case of, they always look out for each other. It's a case of, I have your back in case anything happens. I know you have my back, and I have your back, letting you know that because you've let me know that. But at the same time, if there's criticism from the management and from the booking office, it's going to be said throughout the locker room, and guys will even go to management, and they will say, may not be an expert, but you got to start using prophecy correctly. You got to start using Ash correctly. You got to start using the Stargazers correctly. You got to start, you got to give Chris Ross a world title push. You got to make sure Majigeta closes out the show. They have their hints, and of course, it's not only the locker room, but management as well. Everybody hired to USW is like a family, and there are very few lone wolves in the business. So when it comes down to it, a lot of guys in the locker room were talking about how Prophecy was underutilized, and hopefully this changes that with a win over Tyreek Carver. But essentially with Tyreek Carver, I would assume that if they were trying to put him over Philip Akron for the Blue Belt title when it mattered most, that he would win this match, especially because whether it's Bulletproof or Illusion, you have 2 months or less, 2 months at most, to kind of build up Tyreek Carver as that guy to take down Philip Akron. And I don't think this really helps. But Philip Akron definitely did look like a viable piece to Tyreek Carver in this match. From the moments that I've heard, especially because he was kind of very adamant, and he wasn't like trying to get involved from what I saw, the 3 minutes that I saw. But he did kind of, he was trying to kind of motivate Tyreek Carver. And yeah, not much else to talk about with that match. So I'm sorry for missing that. Could have been the match of the year, and I wouldn't have known. My apologies. Next match was for the USW Tag Team Championships. Andrew Morris and Andrew Palmer, otherwise known as MP45, defended the titles against the Martin Brothers. And this match I was very up in the air about. It was a case of you knew the Martin Brothers had one more, tag team championship run in them. You knew they were going to split up soon, but not before they gave a tag team the rub. And at the same time, you kind of felt like the Martin Brothers were going to walk out tag team champions. But at the same time, you really didn't want to think so, because the reign of MP45 was, by this point in time, very, very short compared to a lot of other tag team championship reigns. Granted, MP45 is probably the most over tag team on the roster. And Jack Ramsey and Austin Cole are a very close second. But, both teams really showed to be legitimate tag team contenders for Tag Team of the Year. The Martin Brothers have been running roughshod over the past couple of weeks with Alex Martin and George Martin picking up singles victories respectively. And especially when they told me that the Martin Brothers cut a promo backstage where they essentially just ripped into Andrew Morris and Andrew Palmer being afterthoughts, jobbers, and unemployed at the same time that they were winning World Tag Team titles, running roughshod over the indie scene, and becoming the staple tag team of USW, which harsh as all hell and rude as all hell and savage as all hell is absolutely true to an extent. So it is extremely funny to kind of see how one-sided the feud and the build-up was. But I just didn't want the reign of MP45 to end, because it was such a young reign, and they're so over, and they got so over in such a short period of time. It was astounding, and it's something that you don't see very often. So, I was really rooting for MP45 to win. I admit, I played favorites. Sorry. But, man. I don't want to say that I disagree. Or I'm sorry, I don't want to say that I agree with the outcome, but I kind of agree with the outcome, MP45 essentially rose up from nothing and became the staple tag team of the division. They took down Jack Ramsey and Austin Cole, which were essentially Benny Franklin and Ezra and Kills in a more technical tag team wrestling kind of standpoint. So essentially their push came very fast. So in order to not kind of overdo it, to not kind of water it down, you take the titles off of them while they're still hot and the crowd keeps behind them. That's the same thing that happened with Crimson Red, with Hernasli, the same thing that happened with Majid Geta, same thing that happened with Cannon a couple of years ago. So yeah, it is a case of probably the smart decision, and probably the smartest decision to take or to have the Martin brothers take the titles off of them, because in essence, the Martin brothers are the model tag team of USW at the moment. They have been there for years. They have stood the test of time, and God, USW is almost 5 years old now. I mean, put that in retrospect, WOW was around for 6 years. Or it was 6 years old. It was 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. WOW is 6 years old. USW is going to be 5 years old this January. January 12th, 2018 will be their 5th birthday, essentially. So, they've stood the test of time. The past almost 5 years as a tag team that has gone through everything. They've even gone through their own demise, where inner workings from inside tore them apart. So yeah, it's a case of probably the best idea to have a model tag team in the company take the titles off of the hottest tag team in the company to keep that fan, response onto MP45. Now, how they utilize MP45, whether they utilize them correctly or not, I don't know. USW has a sad tendency where instead of utilizing the teams more, or instead of utilizing the tag teams to an efficient amount, they'll have one tag team match on a pay-per-view card, and that'll be the tag team championship match. And if we're lucky, we'll get a second with 2 other good tag teams, more than likely fighting for a title shot at the USW tag team titles. So it's a lose-lose, or it's a win or a lose. So yeah, I don't know, not much else to say about it. I don't even have a critique for the match, because both performing teams really worked well together. So yeah, I was very happy with the match. I was very happy with the way it played out, and it was a great kind of end point to where the real main events ended up happening. So yeah, I was very happy with the way the match went. I'm very in agreement with the outcome. I think it makes absolute total sense business wise. And yeah, whether they utilize performers well or not, or to the highest extent or not, you got to give the USW creative department and creative booking office the credit it is due, because it makes great wrestling. So it puts together great shows as well. So that is my opinion on that. Then we get into the meat and potatoes of Aerial Attack 2017, starting with Ezra and Kills and Benny Franklin one-on-one for the first time since Capital Carnage. Yeah, first time since Capital Carnage. I always got confused as to, especially considering the sets are the same now. I mean, with USW, they at least kind of switched the stage setup around. They have a bunch of different LED boards, so they use them in different positions. So Capital Carnage was always, used in a specific thing, but now Intensity and Severity are essentially mirrored stages to each other. So I get a little lost in translation of where I'm performing. Probably all the hits to the head. So this essentially, for the first time since Capital Carnage, was the meeting point between Ezra and Kills and Benny Franklin. When it came down to the build-up, it was probably on this card the best built match, on the card. The animosity, the adrenaline, the anger, the emotion boiling between both men. and the story fucking writes itself. Ezra Hills and Benny Franklin, underutilized. They form their powers to become a tag team. They run roughshod over the company, become really probably the most successful team in USW history. Excuse me. I mean, other than the Martin brothers, I mean, Ezra Hills and Benny Franklin got crowd reception. They had fan reactions. They came close to main eventing Call to Greatness, which is unheard of in the tag team division. In tag team division wrestling. They did it all, really. And, that's something that even teams like Fernandez, Gringo, the Martin brothers, Switchblade and Blade, CED and ED couldn't even say, themselves. So absolute props to both men. And the story writes itself. They formed to a great tag team, and then one guy gets gets this taste of success that the other guy didn't get. The other guy gets jealous. The other guy turns on his partner eventually out of just pure jealousy, attacks him, and then to add salt into the wounds, takes that success from him, and then puts him on the shelf through commentator, then through commentator's table, then through another commentator's table, then through another commentator's table, then breaks a chair over his back, then throws him through the ring, and leaves with his title. The story is right there. Ezra Hills is mad. Benny Franklin tried to put him on the shelf. He took what he had earned, what he had carried, what he had prided himself on, and Benny Franklin, he was jealous. He turned on Ezra Hills, and now Ezra Hills caused him to lose the USW championship. And now both men are at each other's throats. The story writes itself. The story is there. The emotion and the build-up and the climax of the feud was right there. And God, Aerial Attack housed one of my favorite matches on the year. You have Omega Okada 1, Omega Okada 2, even Omega Okada 3. You had Cena versus AJ Styles. I think you had Will Ospreay and Ricochet in... was it NJPW? I was very involved in that match. You had, I believe it was Christopher Daniels. Excuse me, Christopher Daniels versus Cody Rhodes. If I think it was Cody Rhodes. You had, you had Maja Geta and Austin Atomic at Call to Greatness. You had a match that I personally liked, which was Adam Cole versus Jay. I think Adam Cole and Jay Lethal fought this year, if I'm not No, they fought last year, at the end of last year. I mean, it technically counts, but yeah, you had those matches, and so why not add another one from the WWE while we're at it? Fucking Tyler Bate versus Pete Dunne for the UK Championship at NXT TakeOver Chicago. Right there, great matches on the year. Ezra Hills and Benny Franklin fills that right there. You had Benny Franklin just angry. He's angry in his matches. He essentially took me to the beating point, to the point where I was having trouble standing up back at fucking Allegiance. Forgetting the names, guys. I'm sorry. I've got to get used to the schedule. So he took me to the brink at Allegiance, beat down Ezra Hills at Capital Carnage. He's just on a path of destruction. So he's essentially using anger as his motivation. And Ezra Hills is finding a way around that. He's beating down Benny Franklin to the points where he shows weakness. And once he shows that weakness, he's exploiting it. Benny Franklin fights back, powerhouses, overwhelms Ezra Hills, causes him to kind of regroup. The match was great. There was one fucking spot where Benny Franklin went to clothesline Ezra Hills in the corner, missed. Ezra Hills hit him with a drop kick in the back of the head. Benny Franklin rolled out of the ring, and then Ezra Hills, ever the opportunist, ran from one corner post to the other, leaped up to the top rope, and hit a fucking... I always mix up 450 splash and... shooting star press. Hits a shooting star press from the top rope onto Benny Franklin on the outside. The crowd was into it. I mean, this match went on for fucking 30, 35 minutes. You heard chants like, "We want more. We want more. We want more. We want more." You had Benny Franklin go to power bomb Ezra Kills through the table again. Ezra Kills in a way of trying to avoid deja vu hits a fucking hurricanrana onto Benny Franklin, causing him to land on the commentator's table. And then Ezra Kills immediately gets on the apron, goes and turns around, hits a fucking not backwards. He essentially, instead of hitting a springboard and then leaping backwards or turning his body, he essentially turns around, hits a springboard, and then hits a fucking diving splash onto Benny Franklin through the commentator's table. And the crowd pops for that. We want more. We want more. Holy shit. And then the end of the match came when Benny Franklin tried to do what he did to Ezra Kills again, from what he tried to do 2 months ago, but instead of powerbombing him from the ring, from inside the ring, he tries to powerbomb him from the top rope. And Ezra Kills turns that powerbomb into a face buster, which you could tell fucking hurt, because you could see Ezra Kills grab at his tailbone, at his ass after the fucking move. So Benny Franklin goes face down, Ezra Kills gets up, signals for the crowd to get behind him, and then what do you know? Fucking Shining Wizard, 1, 2, 3. Ezra Kills picks up the win over Benny Franklin, and the crowd ends up ecstatic over that. Huge pop of the night, and yeah, fucking just incredible. It was just a great match. The storytelling was amazing, and at the same time, it's kind of a case where they kind of held back a little. There are plans for Bulletproof. That there are plans for Illusion. That there are probably plans for fucking Insanity, for No Forgiveness. There are probably plans for Call to Greatness. So you feel, you have it right there. You could put on Match of the Year right there, but you could tell they were holding back just a little bit because they want to go back with more next time, because there's going to be a next time with this feud. And this is the money feud on Wednesday Night Intensity. And this was a great way to start this real money feud. And one of my favorite matches of the year. I know it will fucking top that at Bulletproof. A fucking amazing match. Gotta give credit to both men where credit is due. Benny Franklin sold well, as Rank Hills sold well. They both fed into the crowd. Benny Franklin seemed like more of a heel than if you combined Baron Corbin's Twitter feuds with people and Roddy Piper's heel tactics. He went to the crowd, and there was one guy who said, "Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you," a million times at Benny Franklin as he got in his face more so ever and ever and ever, and then grabbed him by the collar and said, "Fuck you," and then shoved him back like a taste of your own medicine. So both men fed into the crowd extremely well, and immediately after he shoved the guy in the crowd, Ezra Kills hit him with a running drop kick into the barricade, and then picked the guy up and shook his hand and said, "I'm sorry," and then walked over to Benny Franklin and continued the assault. Great storytelling. That is how you build character, and I'm looking forward to the remainder of the matches. No critiques here. Obvious match of the night. Obvious number one match of the night. And when it came down to it, that was the first main event of two main events, even though main event qualifies as one main event. That was the first of two big money matches on the card, the second being the USW Championship. The latter match of the USW Championship, where Zach Hardy, myself, defended the title against Derek Carter. And a lot of people have said, bring back Chase Clover for when you review stuff about yourself. Bring back the British accent and bring back, the top hat monocle kind of feel to your tone of voice and to the way you bring things forward, and do that for Zach Hardy matches, so that way you can kind of talk about yourself in the third person, not make it seem weird or whatever, and have an excuse of it being a character, being a trait. And of course, I love going on about, "Hello viewers, my name is Chase Clover," and so on and so forth. even though for a large period of time, now that it's come to my attention, my British accent sounds a lot more like an Australian accent. And a British accent can be well instructed into an Australian accent, and I'm not great at accents, but I'm obviously not the worst. But instead of bringing a British accent out and calling myself Chase Clover, I decided, you know what? Why fight it? I'm going to review a USW show. If I'm involved in the USW show, give myself fucking credit. Maybe it'll make me hate myself less. So the match was set last month at Allegiance, with Derek Carter winning a #1 contenders match to qualify for a shot at the USW Championship. And obviously, after I beat Benny Franklin, it became clear that Zach Hardy versus Derek Carter was going to be the match. And afterwards, considering I don't really show up on Intensity anymore, except for pre-recorded promos, which I'll start uploading to the channel very soon once I get permission from the company. And Derek Carter asked the match to be in a ladders match, or a ladder match, to kind of be more interesting, because obviously I couldn't hold my part of the feud not being there. So it grabbed more interest in it. And granted, a lot of people said Ezra Kills and Benny Franklin should have main evented. I fucking agree. I absolutely agree. I think the one thing that USW had in mind was that it's the world title, and except for a special occasion, you know, you could switch it out for another match. But in this case, it was also a ladders match, so it's kind of like more drawing power, I guess. Keep people wondering. And we absolutely did our best to kind of combat what had just gone on, but obviously we were not going to live up to it. But the ladder match, when it came down to it, we fucking held no fucks back. When it came down to it, we were open to a lot of spots. However, at the same time, we both knew that we were lined up for a lot when it comes down to the future. I know what I'm lined up for. Not going to make that aware until after it's been done. And Derek Carter, on the other hand, knows what he's going to be doing, and we both have big plans set in store for Bulletproof, and especially for Call to Greatness, if we can both stay healthy. And I don't need to get surgery on this knee because, God, just seems to be getting worse. So we were up to take whatever spot it may be, but we wanted to have more of a safer regiment than we usually would have, because otherwise we'd just throw our bodies into caution in the wind. So the match started out with good old technical wrestling, to the point where eventually I ended up hitting my signature. I'm blanking on the name. Fuck it. It'll come to me eventually. But Derek Carter goes spilling out to the outside. You know, we get spots like I would be thrown into the barricade. He'd run at me. I'd move, throw him into a ladder, knock the ladder over. It caused a domino effect, knocked 3 ladders over. We fought up the stage to the point where I had gotten Irish whipped into the ladder and then climbed 3 or 4 rungs up, and then turned my body around and hit a corkscrew, which fucked up my back because I landed directly on the stage. Not fun times. It doesn't look like it doesn't have as much give as it looks like it does. And eventually we ended up getting up. We got thrown into the fucking metal rails or whatever that line the stage. We just wanted to make it seem like more of a brawl. We weren't going to top the wrestling match that we had followed, so instead just have a brawl to close out the show. So, you know, there were obviously the spots. You know, for one, Derek Carter took a spill to the outside through a table after I moved out of the way. There was another spot that essentially brought me deja vu, and I was very focused when it came to that spot because it was the repeat of what happened at Final Chapter 2013. No, was it? I think it was no. It was. I'm sorry. It was No Remorse 2013. Final Chapter 2013 is when I took the USW title. Where I took a spill from the top of a ladder all the way to the outside through commentator's table. In 2013, I obviously landed on top of a monitor, which fucked up my back, and I ended up having to get a minor surgery on my lower back because of that, and I was out until February. And then I resumed my feud with Morbid, so it was a kind of a case of deja vu. They thankfully have taken out the big husky monitors and replaced them with not LED, kind of like miniature monitor table TVs or desktop TVs. So that was wiped off earlier on, and I just went through the table. Thankfully, I'm not hurting, at this moment. There was one spot where good old knee was fucked up a little bit, and that was when I decided to go for a CM Punk running knee into the corner, and Carter moved, and I just bashed my knee into the top of the turnbuckle post, and that didn't make it any better because it already felt like I'd fucked up my patella a couple of weeks ago. So obviously, let's hope for better times. And then eventually, we got to continue the brawl. I pushed Derek Carter off of a ladder. He went sailing onto the top rope with his balls hanging over. And I'm not saying hanging out, but he won't be jerking off quite the same way for the next couple of days. As I say that as I rub my arm, which is essentially the utensil I would have to jerk off, because I'm the only one whose standards are low enough to fuck me. Bo Burnham reference for all of you. So it came down to the case of we just wanted to be violent, but not too violent to the point where we'd get hurt, because we do want to kind of harbor ourselves for the big plans in our head. I ended up getting a chair shot to the back, which sent me into the corner, where he then performed a running drop kick onto myself, face first into the corner with a chair. And then eventually to the point where he hit me with an elbow drop. I rolled out to the ring, or out underneath the ropes and to the other side of the ring as he climbed up. I healed enough to hit a springboard where I honestly, it never looked difficult before. But when you're hitting a springboard and you're in midair, harboring out to try to catch yourself on the ladder, you got to do two things. First, you got to make sure you grab onto the ladder. And second of all, you got to make sure you land properly with your feet on the ladder. So it's a very kind of nerve-wracking experience when you're in midair trying not to fuck it up. And I almost did. So I springboarded onto the ladder. It started to a fight at the top of the ladder, and he went for a clothesline. I punched him in the face after ducking. I hit him in the head with a title belt. He ended up getting a little rocky, and in turn, I defied gravity and hit a super kick on Derek Carter, essentially using his own move, knocking him off the top of the ladder. A lot of people questioned me how I did it. I don't fucking know how I did it, and I don't know what the fuck I was thinking at the time either. I super kicked with my left leg, so my right leg, the leg that I fucked up earlier in the match, was the one that I was using to not fall off the ladder. And essentially all I really did was kind of maneuver my body a little bit to the point where I could hold on to the ladder, and I had my right arm on the ladder or whatever, but I got my foot up a little bit high enough. I mean, I was more at the top of the ladder than you would expect, and I hit him. I mean, it was in the chest, but it was the best you could do. And he ended up falling back, and I kind of got my wits around with me and grabbed the title, and the crowd cheered. So it was a great way to end the show. Derek Carter walked off, and I celebrated at the top of the ladder with the title, and that was the end of the show. Oh, you thought it was the end of the show. Did you not read the title? Hills and Franklin, I forgot what I titled it, but also Mr. Anthony is on his way. I say Mr. Anthony. So the credit roll, or the credit tag rolls, fade to black. You see the USW logo pop up, and as it forms and the USW wording gets put in, it cuts a static screen and then a black screen. It goes the Army. Yeah, there we go. The Army dash, and in italics, of 1. ... And then it goes 12, 17. It may be mirrored for you, but essentially, the Army of 1. Don't want to spoil anything for those of you who don't know it. For those of you who do know it, you'll obviously put it in the comments. But all I'm going to say is Mr. Anthony may be on his way to USW, and what a time to be a USW fan, because it seems now more so than ever that they're trying to kind of make it into the bigger stage, you know, to kind of future into more mainstream wrestling, which I am absolutely excited for. And that really got a lot of people excited, because obviously I was still on top of the ladder as the curtains rolled, and the Motiontron played that. The logo went off and the static went down. You could see the crowd quiet down because you could hear the static in the arena. And it went the Army of One, and people popped because we were in Anthony City, Anthony territory, and they obviously knew who it was. So there was a pop and there was a I gotta censor, you know, the name, but and then there was Army of One, Army of One, Army of One chants. And so obviously everybody in attendance was excited. And so I posted on Twitter kind of hint to that, you know, for a little treat for my followers. And that was a great way to end the show. And then the USW logo obviously closed out the show, the banner. And that was USW Aerial Attack 2017. So overall, it was a really, really fun show. Really enjoyable show. It really kind of improved as the night went on. The kickoff match started it well. The matches to follow kind of, you know, surprisingly enough, held up and continued to go forth until the meat and potatoes, what was it? The potatoes and the meat and potatoes, something like that. Yeah, meat and potatoes of the show really kicked off. It was a match, and then it was a brawl to close it out. Then a fucking huge bombshell dropped on the company, and that's going to make a memorable show for this year. Maybe it's not the best show. Maybe it's not the best work show. Maybe it's not the best book show. But it absolutely will go down as one of the most memorable shows for the company this year. And the bombshell at the end definitely helped kind of bring more notice to the show. So overall, what is my rating for Aerial Attack 2017? God, it's really hard to say at this moment, because you know, you could have the kickoff match could be rated 4.25, 4.5, and the next match could be rated 4.25, 4.5, just because of how good it was. But because of where it placed, you know, it could have hurt the match. But I'm going to say out of 5 rating, 3.75 out of 5. It was an absolutely above average show. It was very fun. It was very enjoyable. Was it worth the $19.99 to rent for the first time? Absolutely. Absolutely. If you haven't seen the show, you need to see this show, because not only was it a big spot for the future and for the next couple of months on the show, but also it could be one of those shows that could be considered one of the defining moments in USW. And was it worth the $5 afterwards to buy and to own? I would say yes. I honestly would say yes. I don't say yes to that a lot, but it's definitely a show that will be memorable. You will want to go back and watch. You will go back and watch and enjoy. And I really have very, very few things bad to say about the show. Anything that I could say bad about the show really just involves the booking going into the show before the show, and not about the show itself. So yes, very memorable show, very enjoyable show, and will be looked on fondly at the end of the year and probably at the end of next year. So that being said, I don't see any comments in the chat, so I'm going to end this review right here. I'd like to thank you all for watching and for participating in this review. I have about 4 hours to sleep until I have to wake up for class tomorrow, which is not going to be fun. So that being said, thank you guys for watching. I sincerely hope you enjoyed. I'm having plans for the future. If you don't know, dependent on, you know, what the day is, what the circumstances are, I may put out a really short video, you know, for a comedic effect or whatever, and hopefully you would enjoy it. But yeah, I'm hoping to kind of bounce back into more unique, interesting projects that maybe you're not familiar with or you would like to be familiar with and hopefully will enjoy. So that being said, thank you guys for watching. I sincerely hope you enjoyed. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more stuff like this coming soon. I am Zach Hardy, and I am signing off. I will see you all soon. Take care.